Infection rates have dropped.
We're going live now to Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab, who is making an announcement. Let's listen in.
To all Lebanese, we're still living around the catastrophe that hit Lebanon, a catastrophe that hit all of us in the heart due to the corruption in politics and administration and the whole state. I have said before that the corruption system is deep there, all over the place. And I discovered that the corruption system is bigger than the state, and the state is suffering from that sort of corruption. The state and the country cannot face that corruption. One of the types of this corruption has exploded in the Beirut port. The catastrophe hit all of us. We have so many other models in every place. The threat is big. I am afraid of so many other types of corruption that might hit Lebanon within the protection of the elite who controls the fate and future of the country. Those elites who live on the rift and trade with the ambitions and hopes of people according to the calculations and according to the different agenda. Today, we are facing a massive catastrophe, and all the powers that are keen to the future and the welfare of the country should work together, should cooperate together, should keep silent, should be mourning the lives of the martyrs, should be mourning in respect of those mothers who lost their husbands and those wives who lost their husbands and those mothers who lost their sons. They should work to find a place for the displaced people. They must have done that. The catastrophe is massive, is beyond description. But some of us live in different era and different atmosphere. They only care about scoring points and about talking to the people in a sort of enthusiasm in order to hit the remaining of the country. Shame on them. They should feel the shame because their corruption has shown us this catastrophe, and God only knows what are the other catastrophes that are hidden within their corruption and under their corruption. They are used to change the words, to change the facts, but what we need now is to change them, because they are the real trouble, they are the real catastrophe, the real crisis in Lebanon. They have changed so many times in the past. Every time people are about to get rid of their corruption, they change their skin. They haven't read the revolution of the Lebanese in 2019. This revolution was against them. They haven't understood properly this revolution. They continue their practices. They continue their calculations. They thought that they can overcome the changes and the hopes and the aspirations of the Lebanese people in a strong country, in a fair judiciary, in fighting corruption, in putting an end to financial policies that have taken the country to the edge of being broken. The policies have put the country under massive debt. That's why economic and social collapse is there. And at the same time, those people, weeks after forming this government, have tried to throw the sins on the government and blame the government for all the corruption, for all the mistakes. This is true. Shame on them. Shame on them. This government has exerted a lot of efforts to put a roadmap to rescue this country. Every minister in this cabinet, in this government, has played his maximum, has exerted the maximum effort, because we are all keen on our people and the future of our people. We don't have any personal interest. What we are keen of is to rescue our country. We have been under campaigns of accusations, but we refused to be dragged into nonsense, because we need to work, and we need to work hard. Those people haven't stopped attacking us, changing the facts to protect themselves and to cover their mistakes. We have carried out the change in Lebanon according to the wishes of the Lebanese people, but a lot of problems are all over the place, because these matters are being protected and supported in a dirty manner by this elite, because they have the ability to do so. We fiercely fight. We honorably fight, but this fight is not equal. We are alone, and they are all together. They have used all the weapons against us. They have changed the realities. They have changed the facts. They have spread the rumors. They tell the people lies. They have committed every sin, because they know that we are a threat to them. They know that our success means the real change in this elite. Those people have been there for decades, and the bad smell is all over the place. Today, we are here in this particular point, in this earthquake that hit Lebanon with all the social, human, and economic and national consequences. Our main goal, our main aim is to deal with these consequences together with a quick investigation that will hold everyone responsible if committed mistakes. We are now talking to the people. We are now depending on the people's hopes to take these people to the court. We need to change. We are with the ambitions of the Lebanese people to bring the change. We need to move forward to the transparency, to a country that respects its people, to a country that lives within transparency, to a country that lives within equal policies. But now we are not. We are not. And at this particular moment, we have to go back to the people to fight with them against corruption. We need to open the door for national salvage, national rescue. We need to be part of the people. That's why I declare today the resignation of this government. God bless Lebanon. God bless Lebanon.
That was Lebanon's Prime Minister, or former Prime Minister, Hassan Diab there. He had been in the role since January 2020. Just to recap what we heard from him, he said the state cannot deal with this level of corruption. He said that corruption was what was to blame for the port explosion. He said he's afraid for other types of corruption. He talked about, some people in the face of this tragedy, talking about the port explosion, only care about political point scoring. Interestingly, he talks about the political elite saying they haven't or had not read the revolution of October 2019, that some people have tried to blame the government for all of the mistakes that have happened. He reiterated that his government has tried. He talked about the political elite stopping change, blocking change from happening. He said they used all of their weapons against us. Let's go live now. I believe we can bring in Bernard Smith, who is on the streets of Beirut. Bernard, so Hassan Diab there has officially resigned. What happens now?
Well, he's resigned to the president, and now we have to see if a new cabinet and a new prime minister can be appointed, and those negotiations are going on at the moment, we understand. There are two names in the frame. Saad Hariri, that's something of out with the new and in with the old. He was the former prime minister who resigned only back in January, and resigned under enormous international pressure as the country economy collapsed because of the banking system collapsed and the currency now lost 80% of its value. He would not be a popular choice, it would seem. Another name in the frame is Nawaf Salam. He's a former diplomat, currently a judge at the International Court of Justice. He is more acceptable, we could say, to those who are calling for change in Lebanon, but when previous occasions when his name has been mooted, Hezbollah and its allied parties have rejected him. So there's a lot of horse trading likely to be going on. What we know, though, what we do know is that the opposition in the past have refused to work with this now caretaker cabinet, Hezbollah-dominated and its allied parties-dominated cabinet. The opposition wouldn't work with them. So unless there's some way forward that can be some sort of agreements that can be reached between these parties, that is the only way you might get what the international community wants, which is some sort of government of national unity to try and begin to pull Lebanon out of this crisis. Macron has suggested something like that. He wants all Lebanese political parties to work together, and if he's satisfied that they've shown they can do that, only then would the billions of dollars in aid that this country needs, then that might begin to be unlocked.
Bernard, what we're seeing next to you is live images from Beirut, lines of riot police walking down the street. Doesn't look like there's a lot of protesters, at least not in the frame that we can see. Looks like they're slightly further away, a bit of tear gas being flown around. What's the situation on the ground in terms of protests there compared to previous nights?
Well, as the Prime Minister was speaking, there was a confrontation near Parliament, and riot police used a lot of tear gas to force them back, and that makes me jump. Sorry about that, but that's some more tear gas. And that is what's been happening when they've tried to get close to Parliament. They have been fairly ruthlessly pushed back. It's a scene we've seen repeated over the last couple of nights. They are, it has to be said, on a fairly small scale in comparison with protests past. And what happens is the police, as I say, use these large quantities of tear gas to push protesters back. But most of the people in Beirut, most of the people who want in Lebanon, have been so exhausted by what happened on Tuesday and what was happening in the country before that, that they're concentrating, certainly in these last few days, on trying to live. 250 to 300,000 people are homeless, and if you're not homeless, you're probably living in an apartment with shattered windows, and you're trying to find work, you're trying to find food, you're trying to fix up your home. So most people have other priorities at the moment, but there's no disguising the anger, frustration and despondency that people speak, that we've been speaking to over the last few days, as we see them trying to pick up their lives after Tuesday's catastrophe.
Bernard, we want you to stay safe, so move about if you need to. The pictures that we're looking at from around the city, they do give the sense that, you know, something significant is happening in Lebanon. Now we have Hassan Diab announcing his resignation. As you say, we're waiting to hear the details of a possible caretaker government and the people who may replace him. Just remind us of how we got to this point. I mean, obviously, you know, we have this massive explosion. People are saying this is the fault of the political elite. This is the result of negligence. This is the result of corruption. In fact, that's what Hassan Diab himself said in his address. But the country has been in turmoil for some time.
It has, because culminating in Tuesday's explosion of that ammonium nitrate, a consequence of the political rot and the corruption that this country has suffered in the last 30 to 40, 50 years because of the political elites that have divvied up the main sources of income here, the electricity company, the water company, the telecoms company. The port was a major cash cow for one particular group of peoples because of the customs duties that they were able to skim off on goods coming into the port. And the problem is that the people protesting tonight and those others who aren't protesting, but many people in Beirut who want to see their government change or want to see political change here, it's extremely difficult with the current system to affect it because Lebanon's electoral system is set up, is geared to protect the political elites that run the country. If you want to run for parliament, you have to be appointed or overseen by one of the political elite groups. And to change that system, those political elites, to change that system, those political elites have to agree to it. And analysts I've spoken to today and people who are involved in Lebanese politics say even an explosion as catastrophic as the one that was on Tuesday might not be enough, probably wouldn't be enough to get those elites to easily give up their grip on power. And that is why it's international pressure, people believe, is necessary to force those people who control Lebanon to give up power and to change the way this country is governed.
We're going to talk a little bit later. We've got some analysts standing by about that kind of side of things, the role of foreign countries. But just tell me, you've been there a few days. What have people on the ground been telling you? What do they believe will happen or should happen after this horrific tragedy?
Well, people initially were calling for, at the very least, an election. We haven't had a suggestion, I haven't heard a suggestion that there's going to be an election. We've heard basically that there's going to be a change in cabinet. Parliament would have to agree an election. For the people here, they want nothing less than a new election. That at the very least might give some opportunity for change. But as I've explained, even then, when there is a new election, the way the system is set up is that those who win, those who stand for parliament are representatives, essentially represented by sect. It's a confessional electoral system, and the elites that essentially govern this country have to approve of those people in parliament. So they want, of course, real political change. They want people to govern for the Lebanese rather than for themselves or their political parties. It's going to be extremely hard to deliver that to them. And as I said before, that is why many people here believe only international pressure will force those people who run Lebanon to change their minds. And people are talking about sanctioning individuals, sanctioning groups to force them to make change here. Lebanese say they want change, but they can't do it on their own without international help.
OK, Bernard, we'll get you to stand by. We'll leave you there for now. Thank you so much for that, Bernard Smith, our correspondent who is live there on the ground in Beirut. We can go now to Heiko Women. He is the project director for Iraq, Syria and Lebanon at the International Crisis Group. Thank you for coming back on the programme. I believe you were able to listen to Hassan Diab's address, his speech that he made as he announced that the government is stepping down. What do you make of what he had to say?
Well, I mean, it's of course a full attack on the political elite of the country as a whole. I mean, you listen to him, and at least I listened to him and thought almost instantly, I mean, what were you thinking when you took that job? Because it was very clear in January that this government of so-called independence was, of course, not independent, that the existing political forces were bargaining over spots in that government, places to retain their influence. And somehow Hassan Diab appeared to think that he could still act independently, and that he, in fact, would carry out what the revolution had asked for, and that was, I mean, I hesitate to say naive, but I mean, it was certainly divorced from reality. It was not something that he could do.
He talked about the political elite being, stopping change. They were blocking change from happening. He said they used all of their weapons against us. Who is this they that he is talking about? When you think political elite, you'd think the Prime Minister. How is he not part of the political elite? Who is the they that he's talking about?
That's a good question indeed. And I suspect and I fear that many Lebanese will hear that and think they means everybody but their own political leader. Now, in October last fall, when the movement happened, when the demonstrations happened, the rallying call, of course, was all means all. All of them have to go, and there were people who were ready to denounce political leaders they followed before. There were people who were ready to denounce political leaders who claim that they represent the sectarian group that these people supposedly belong to. So that was a big step forward. But the bottom line is these political players all work according to the same logic, and they all have a shared interest in keeping the system as it is. And so to the extent that the Diab government made efforts to break through those patterns, and they made some efforts. I mean, I wouldn't completely discount what they were doing. They made steps in the right direction. But as he said, rightly so, they stopped or were stopped way before being able to implement any of this, simply because it goes against vested interest.
Lebanon is a multi-confessional state, as it's called, but many call it political sectarianism, fueling these patronage networks, which I guess is what you were talking about there, which is what has given rise to this entrenched corruption, this entrenched political elite. Is there any discussion about changing that very system, changing that proportional representation system?
So that is a common narrative. I'm not so sure to what extent I really want to subscribe to it. I think what has created this system is that when Lebanon came out of its civil war in 1990, the people who basically took power in that post-war order were the warlords, right? They were the warlords who were part of the civil war, who traded their fatigues, so far they were wearing fatigues, for suits, and who brought some of their militias into the state apparatus and converted their wartime systems of bases of power into a basis of power in the state. And they brought in some people with international relations money, like people like Saad Hariri, and they ran it that way. And I would call this, I mean, from a political science perspective, a captured state, or a state captured by several groups of former warlords. And those people are arguing or are proposing that they are defending the interests of these sectarian groups. In fact, they try to monopolize the representation of these sectarian groups, but mostly for their own political interests. So we can argue if this system can be reformed without, or if the situation can be addressed without getting rid of the system. Perhaps it cannot. Perhaps it's too entrenched now at this point. You just have to do away with it radically. But it's not the origin of it. The origin are, in fact, these post-war elites.
Thank you so much for explaining all of that. There's so much to talk about. We'll have to leave it there for now. Haika Women there, Project Director for Iraq, Syria and Lebanon at the International Crisis Group.